The Galactic Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. They had fought countless species, each falling like the last, unable to match the Empire's technology, strategy, and might. When they arrived at the human colony of Epsilon Prime, they expected nothing different. The Imperial General, High Commander Vorthak, stood before his officers, arms crossed, his golden battle armor gleaming under the dim war room lights. The jungle planet stretched beyond the observation deck, dark and wet, storms rolling across the horizon. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he turned to his second-in-command. "The humans resist," he scoffed. "Let them." His officers chuckled. The Empire had fought humans before, messy creatures, loud and undisciplined. Their so-called tactics relied on outdated kinetic weapons, their technology centuries behind. Humans bled easily, panicked under pressure, and most importantly, they couldn't hide. Vorthak waved a clawed hand at the holomap. "Deploy the search squads. Heat scans active. Energy sensors at full range. I want this jungle purged before sunrise." Metal doors hissed open, and squads of armored troopers marched into the night, their visors glowing against the rain. Their scanners pulsed through the jungle, reading every life signature, every shift in the environment. They walked with confidence, weapons at the ready, expecting resistance. Nothing. Hours passed. The jungle was silent, aside from the rain tapping against their armor. Then, a sharp, wet crack. A soldier collapsed, a smoking hole between his eyes. His body hit the mud with a dull splash. The others froze. No plasma signature. No energy discharge. "Contact," barked the squad leader. The scanners flared, sweeping the jungle, searching. Nothing. "Where did it come from?" another trooper shouted. The comms crackled. A whisper, low and deliberate, barely cutting through the rain. "One shot. One kill." Panic rippled through the squad. "Fall back. Form up." The leader barked, but before the order could be completed, another shot. Another body hit the ground. The remaining soldiers turned their weapons in every direction. Their visors scanned thermals, motion sensors pulsing. The jungle was empty. Another shot. Another soldier gone. Then silence. The jungle swallowed them whole. High Commander Vorthak clenched his jaw as the latest report flashed across his console. 3 patrol squads had vanished. No bodies recovered. No distress signals sent. Just gone. "Ridiculous," he hissed, pacing. "Humans don't possess cloaking technology. They don't have the intelligence for this." His officers nodded, agreeing. This had to be a malfunction in their scanners. A malfunction in reality. "Deploy the drones," Vorthak growled. "I want every inch of that jungle scanned. If the humans believe they can hide, they will learn what it means to challenge the Empire." The drones lifted off, hundreds of them, sweeping the terrain. Their sensors cut through the dark, mapping heat signatures, tracking movement, reading atmospheric disturbances. Still nothing. One by one, the drones started going offline. No warnings. No distress signals. Just static. Vorthak's claws dug into his armrest. Impossible. The comms flared. A garbled transmission, barely audible through the interference. A whisper. "You should have never come here." The rain had not stopped in hours. Thick, heavy drops pattered against the soaked jungle floor, masking the slow, measured breaths of the sniper. He lay motionless, buried in the mud, ghillie suit blending seamlessly with the terrain. Water pooled around him, insects crawled over his hands, but he remained still. Patience was a weapon. Through the scope, he watched the next patrol move in. 5 targets. Standard formation. Their armor gleamed under the flashes of lightning, their helmets scanning in all directions. They were cautious now. They had reason to be. One of them paused, shifting uneasily. Even through the rain, the sniper could see the tension in his stance. They were afraid. Good. He adjusted his aim. Slow. Precise. Wind calculation, drop compensation, breathing in, holding, exhale. A suppressed shot cracked through the jungle. The lead soldier dropped instantly. The others snapped their weapons up, scanning, yelling into their comms. They still didn't understand. Another shot. One more fell.
Panic.
They fired wildly into the trees, their weapons lighting up the night. Plasma bolts seared through the foliage, but the sniper had already shifted, moving centimeters at a time, unseen, unheard. Their scanners flared, trying to pinpoint movement. They expected a cloaked target, a shimmer, a distortion in the air. They relied on technology. That was their mistake. A third shot. The last two soldiers broke formation, retreating, stumbling over the wet terrain. They were abandoning their search, breaking discipline. The sniper let them go. Fear would do more damage than a bullet. Their comms were open. He listened in. Desperation. Officers demanding answers. Troopers gasping for breath. No one wanted to admit it, but the truth was sinking in. They couldn't see him. The Empire didn't believe in camouflage. Their species never needed it, their vision sharp enough to detect prey from miles away. They had always relied on dominance, on overwhelming force. Against other species, it had always worked. Against him, it meant nothing.
More squads deployed.
More search teams. Their best hunters, their most advanced drones, all flooding into the jungle. It wouldn't matter. He had the terrain. He had patience. They had fear. The sniper shifted, crawling inches at a time through the mud.
He was close now.
A command unit had set up an outpost, reinforced with sentry turrets and shield generators. They thought they were safe. They thought numbers would protect them. He lined up his shot. A single officer stood at the center of the camp, barking orders. The sniper exhaled. The shot rang out. The officer crumpled. The camp exploded into chaos. It had begun. The storm raged on, but it wasn't the rain that unsettled them. It was the silence. No enemy transmissions, no distress calls from missing squads, only the crackle of static and the occasional whisper, his voice, cutting through their comms like a blade. They had stopped calling it a malfunction. It wasn't interference. It wasn't sabotage. It was him. Morale was breaking. Soldiers hesitated before stepping into the jungle. Some refused altogether. A species that had never known fear was now drowning in it. Their officers threatened, barked orders, but discipline crumbled under the weight of something they didn't understand. He let them fester in their uncertainty. A shot here, a whisper there. They flinched at shadows, fired at nothing. Every night, their patrols returned with fewer numbers. Every morning, more bodies were found with the same clean, precise wounds. The Empire sent in heavier units. Walkers, armored transports, suppression fields. Their solution was to crush the problem with force, but force meant nothing if you were blind. Another commander fell. A single shot through the visor, executed mid-sentence. His guards stood right beside him, yet they had seen nothing. Panic spread faster than orders. Dissent took root. Whispers among the lower ranks, rumors of an enemy they couldn't fight, a ghost in the trees, a demon that saw them but could not be seen. Some swore he was more than human. Others started questioning the Empire itself. The sniper listened. The cracks in their unity were widening. He let them. Another patrol was deployed, this time with thermal dampeners cloaking fields, every countermeasure they could devise. They swept through the jungle, their weapons charged, their breathing shallow. One of them stepped over something soft. A body. Not a human. Not a soldier. One of their own, laid out deliberately in their path, arms crossed, helmet missing. His face frozen in an expression of absolute terror. The team scattered. Some abandoned their posts, some ran into the dark. The rest he picked off one by one. Their war machines were useless. Their technology irrelevant. They had spent centuries dominating lesser species, bending entire civilizations to their will. But they had never faced a predator that understood patience. He was not fighting them.
He was hunting them.
Vorhak's claws gripped the edges of the war table, his breathing ragged, his golden armor dulled with mud and blood. This was not a war. It was an execution. His forces were the ones being slaughtered, not in open battle, but in the dark, one by one, unseen and helpless. The latest report was the worst yet. Entire platoons had vanished. No bodies, no traces, just equipment left behind, rifles discarded in the mud, armor abandoned like empty shells. The Empire's soldiers had not fallen. They had fled. This was impossible. The Empire did not retreat. The Empire did not know fear. And yet here they were, afraid to step beyond their own barricades, afraid to turn their backs, afraid of him. A new order was issued. No more patrols. No more searches. Defensive perimeters only. Let the storm pass. Let reinforcements arrive. This was no longer about victory. It was about survival. But the jungle did not let them rest. The silence was worse than the gunfire. Soldiers flinched at every sound. The rustling of leaves, the snap of a branch. Shadows became enemies. Their own thoughts became weapons against them. Then, the whispers started again. Their own calms turned against them, voices breaking through the static. You don't belong here. You are prey. Run. Some did. Even officers. Even seasoned veterans who had crushed entire civilizations under their boots. They ran. Vorthak watched it all unravel from his command station, jaw clenched so tight it ached. This thing, this human, had shattered his forces without ever showing his face. The realization settled deep in his chest, cold and undeniable. The Empire had underestimated humans. Not their technology, not their weapons, but their nature. They were not prey. They were not weak. They were something far worse. A species that thrived in the hunt. A species that could outwait, outthink, and outfight anything that dared to chase them. Another officer fell beside him, his helmet clattering against the floor. A single bullet. Silent.
Perfect.
Vorthak didn't even turn. There was no point. He already knew. They had lost. The retreat order was issued. Full withdrawal. The mighty Galactic Empire, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, broken by a single unseen warrior. As the last dropships lifted off, the jungle remained silent. The storm had passed. The battle was over. But one thing was certain. The Empire would never invade a human world again. The ships burned through the atmosphere, engines roaring as they escaped the cursed jungle below. Inside the command vessel, Vorthak sat motionless, his claws drumming against the metal armrest. He refused to look at the remaining officers, the ones who had survived, not through skill, not through strategy, but through sheer luck. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. A full battalion had been sent to crush a human colony. They had left with barely a fraction of their forces intact. Even the high command would struggle to explain this failure, to justify how an empire built on supremacy had been forced into a retreat by an enemy they never even saw. Vorthak activated the war logs, scanning through the reports. The numbers were meaningless now. The losses staggering. The tactics incomprehensible. What he cared about was the last transmission picked up before they abandoned the jungle. The sniper had spoken only once. Tell them what happened here. Not a boast. Not a threat. A statement of fact. The Empire would never return. The bridge remained silent as the stars stretched across the viewport, the jungle planet shrinking behind them. Yet even in the void of space, even far beyond that cursed battlefield, they could still feel it. The gaze of something watching. Waiting. They hadn't escaped. They had been let go.